Hi, welcome back to Bookish Brummy. My name's Mel and in today's video we're going to be talking about some books. So today's video is not entirely the video that I thought that today's video was going to be. Initially I thought I was going to be doing an in-depth review of Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. I just finished reading that the other week and I had intended to do an in-depth review of all of the books from the Vampire Chronicle series. And I've already done one for the interview with the vampire, which I read back in October. However, there wasn't really enough for me to say about the book, The Vampire Lestat, to warrant doing it a separate video and doing an in-depth review. So there's no point making videos that I don't particularly want to make because I will just end up boring myself, and if I bore myself I'm going to end up boring you too. So what I thought today we would do is we would talk about all the series of books that I'm currently reading at the moment, have a look at how many out of a series that I've actually read, and do I actually want to continue reading that series. So I feel like at the moment authors seem to sign deals where they do multiple books, and this sort of really easily leads to having a series of books. So you know, you always end up reading the first book of a series, but do you actually come back to that series? Does it keep a hold on you? So I've sort of done a bit of an inventory of my shelves today to sort of ask myself that question, because I thought it'd be really good if we had a look at this at the beginning of January, because then I can sort of keep an eye on this throughout the year. There are other series that I haven't started yet that I do own that I want to start reading, but I sort of know that I want to get through some of the series that I'm already reading, so I literally don't have tons and tons of them started. Forget sort of what's happened in the books at the beginning and then try to come back in, you know, 5 or 6 books down the line and I don't know what's going on. So yeah, let's start looking at that. And I think that the Vampire Chronicles is a really good place to start, because I've started that series in October with Interview with the Vampire. Now there's 13 books in Vampire Chronicles. It was written by Anne Rice. I have read 2 of them so far. However, I'm not mad about that because I literally finished The Vampire Lestat last week, and as I said, I only started this series back in October, so I wasn't really anticipating I'd be any further through it at the moment. I'm really enjoying this series, so I do anticipate that I want to continue with this series, and I'm looking forward to. I don't yet have a copy of the next book, which is Queen of the Damned, but I'm hoping to be able to get a hold of a copy of that soon so that I can continue reading that one. The next series, which we've actually seen on my channel, is the Long Earth series by Terry Pratchett, which is a sci-fi fantasy series. And this was written by Terry Pratchett in conjunction with Stephen Baxter. And it is basically about the people on Earth discover that they can step sideways into other versions of Earth. And there's like millions of versions of this Earth if they step into those, so they can either step east or step west, and essentially nobody knows how far the different Earths stretch out to. Like, it's just millions and millions and millions. And there's 5 books in this series. So at the moment I've read The Long Earth and I've read The Long War. The third one would be The Long Mars, which I do have in my collection. I've had for some time actually, but I actually only started reading this series in the end of November. So I read the first book of it at the end of November and then picked up the second book to read at the start of December, I think is how it went. So again, I have not actually been reading this series for very long, and I'm already 2 books out of the 5 through. I am again really enjoying this series, so I do think that I will continue to read this series. I say I've had the books for quite some time. I've actually had the books for about 10 years, and I forgot about them. They got lost in moves, they've been in boxes and things like that. I didn't even know I had them, and then I discovered them when I did a video on books that I had not finished. And I think the first book I'd done a DNF on because I was poorly years and years ago. Totally forgot I owned the book, so I decided to pick that one up and try reading it again, and then absolutely loved it. So yeah, I will definitely be continuing with that series. The third series again is another one that we've seen on my channel. Now I call it a series, it's probably more of a trilogy, but I think a trilogy can be classed as a series. And it's the Alice series by Christina Henry. So in October I had begun to read these. So the first one is Alice, and the second book is Red Queen, and then the third one is Through the Looking Glass. So I read the first 2. I actually have the third book, but I've not picked it up to read it yet. This series is like a very dark take on Alice in Wonderland. So we're not actually in Wonderland, but we are with Alice, and she breaks out of a psychiatric hospital and then continues on an adventure, which seems to involve characters from Alice in Wonderland, but those characters are humans. It wasn't as good as I'd hoped it would be. Sorry. And I didn't rate it that highly. However, I am intrigued to get to the third book because I actually own the third book, and they're not very long. I mean, they're under 300 pages long, so I don't think it's going to take me that long to read it. But I just want to see how Christina and Henry actually closes off this trilogy, because my feeling was with the first two books is they should have just been in one book. I'm not really sure why they were split into two books, because literally the second book continues straight off from where the first book left off, like finished. And I don't know, I just found parts of the story were like too simple. I wanted it to be a bit grittier and a bit more in depth than what it actually was. So although this is not my favourite series at the moment, I am willing to finish this series off. The fourth series, again, is another series that we saw on my channel, which I started in October, was the Anno Dracula series by Kim Newman. So there are 6 books in that series. So I've read the first one, which was Anno Dracula, and I am yet to read the second one, which is The Bloody Red Baron. Now, this series is quite entertaining. It's like a comedic take. The first one was set in Victorian London, and the cast is basically every vampire that's ever been in a literary book since time began, by the look of it. And the society of characters in the book is also made up from other people's literary characters that would have been alive during the Victorian period, but also real not characters, but like real people that have been made into characters. So for example, you've got Queen Victoria has a role in there, and so does Oscar Wilde. And it's really interesting in a way that Kim Newman has put this together. It's quite entertaining. It's a little bit confusing because there were quite a lot of characters in the first book, and it seems to me like each book is set in a slightly different time zone. So the second one, The Bloody Red Baron, I feel this is set at like the start to the middle of the 20th century potentially, so a bit far removed from the first one, which was set in the 19th century. I was enjoying that series. The only reason that I haven't yet actually got around to finishing it is I haven't had the opportunity with the different reading prompts that I've been doing. But it is a series that I would like to come back to. I don't feel negatively about this series, but I also don't feel like it's the best thing that I've read either. Like, I'm enjoying the Vampire Chronicles more than this series, but it is completely different because it's, you know, it's a comedy, really. It's like comedy, fantasy, horror. But I do from time to time like to have a bit of a chuckle, and that's just the kind of thing that I like to read, so I will be finishing that series. The next one is one that I've not really spoken about on this channel. So it is the, I think it's the Detective Inspector Helen Grace series by MJ Arledge. So there are 14 books currently in this series, and I've read the first one, Eeny Meeny, and I've read the second one, which was Pop Goes the Weasel. The third one, I think, is, let me look, The Doll's House, that's it. So I do have The Doll's House because I remember the Works had a really good deal on these books a couple of years ago, so I picked up a few of them at the time. So I do have that one, but I've never got around to it, and I actually think when I read Pop Goes the Weasel, the second one, that was either at the beginning of last year or the end of the year before, and I still haven't really been motivated to pick up the third one, The Doll's House, yet. Now, I own it, so I may get round to reading it, but I quite like police procedurals, or I used to, which is what this is. But there was just something about this series, I felt like I'd read much better series. Like, I wasn't really totally drawn in by this one. I have to admit, like the first book, Eeny Meeny, I was even at the time thinking, oh, you know, I don't know if I'm going to like the second book. However, Pop Goes the Weasel, I felt that the series improved, the characters' likability improved a little bit, and it felt more like something that I could carry on reading, but I just haven't bothered to pick up the third book yet. What I would say with that one is I may one day get around to reading the third book, but I don't anticipate that I'm actually going to finish this series. I think that there are other police procedurals, you know, detective books, and I've got quite a few of them listed here. You know, I've got way more that I enjoy, that I want to read, so I just don't think I'm going to continue with this one after the third book. So the next one, actually speaking about police series, is the Detective Maeve Kerrigan series by Jane Casey. Now, I absolutely love this series. This is my favourite detective series to date. I really, really love this. There's 12 books in this series. I own 11 of them. I've read the first 10, and I haven't read the 11th because I really don't want to have read the last book in the series. So I'm just sort of saving it really until the 12th one comes out in paperback and I can get hold of that. However, I have actually received the pre-order of that for Christmas off my friend, which was really, really sweet. So obviously I'm still waiting for that book to come out in paperback, but when it does, a copy will be sent to me, courtesy of her. So I think that when the 12th book is on its way to me, then I'll get around to reading the 11th book. And then whether or not I hold on to the 12th one or not, I don't think I will actually. I think I will just get it read. But I really, really like this series. I think Jane Casey has done it really, really well. I really like the Maeve Kerrigan character. I think the crimes are all really in depth. They're all really well written. The characters are all really well written. This is exactly the kind of sort of police investigation book that I like to read. And I'll be really sad actually when the Maeve Kerrigan series eventually finishes. And I actually think I said that to Jane Casey because I managed to meet her in 2025. I went to there was some crime literary festival that I went to, and she did a speech there, and I took my favourite books from that series for her to sign, and I said to her that I was actually holding on to book 11 and not reading it yet because I didn't want it to be over. So I think she knows I'm going to miss that series. So just change my notes over. Okay, so the next series I've got going is one again that we've very, very recently discussed on this channel because I've literally just started it the other week. So it's the Passage trilogy by Justin Cronin, and this is like a post-apocalyptic world where it seems that vampires are involved. Now I don't want to say too much about this because I've actually been reading The Passage, which is book number 1, in the last week, so I will be reviewing that on Thursday in the weekly catch-up. But I am really, really enjoying it, and I will definitely be carrying on with this. There's only 3 books in the trilogy. The next one is the 12, which I do own because I was fortunate enough to find the first book, which is The Passage, and the second book, the 12, in book 66 last year at some point. So I really didn't pay a lot of money for these books either, and they're absolutely fantastic. Well, the first one has been fantastic. I can't see why the second one wouldn't be. So then the next one actually is another series that I'm really, really enjoying, which is the City Blues Quartet by Ray Celestin. So this is like historical fiction, like criminal fiction, and the first book was called The Axeman's Jazz, and this was set in, I want to say, like 1930s downtown Chicago, but it may have been earlier than that. I can't quite remember. It might have been 1910. I can't quite remember, but I did read it last year, and it's sort of set during Prohibition and the jazz era. So you actually have some big names who are just in the background, but they were like real people that existed at the time, but they're just background characters in the book. And essentially there is a serial killer going around called the Axeman. And apparently such a serial killer did actually exist, but obviously this version of it is fictionalised for this book. But I thought it was done really, really well. I love the scene setting that Ray Celestin did, and I just could sort of imagine myself there in downtown, no, it wasn't Chicago, sorry, it was New Orleans, in downtown New Orleans while this was going on. It was really, really good, and I'm actually really excited to read the second book, which is, I think it's called Dead Man's Blues. Dead Man's Blues, yeah. Now I actually have this because I knew after I read The Axeman's Jazz that I definitely had to keep reading this series, and I did put it on my TBR. I think it was at the beginning of November or December, but it didn't fit any of the reading challenge points that I had to cover in November or December, so unfortunately I didn't get around to it. So I'm really hoping that I can get around to that one soon. It's absolutely fantastic start to the series with the Axeman's Jazz. Okay, so the next series is another detective one, so it's a D.I. James Walker series by Alex Pine. There are currently 6 books in this series. Now, this is like an interesting one because this one is seasonal, so it's about a detective inspector, and essentially every time a crime happens, it's like Christmas Day, or it's in the lead up to Christmas, or in the days between Christmas and New Year. And we follow this detective inspector around who works in this really small town in the Peak District. Yeah, it's like Midsummer's Murders. There's just always these horrific crimes that seem to happen on Christmas Day that he has to resolve. Now, I thought this series started off really well. I did really enjoy the first 2 books. I've read 5 out of the 6 books. I did not pick up Cold Blooded Killer, which is the most recent one that was released for Christmas 2025. I think that from about book 4 onwards, I became a little bit less convinced, because I just think that it started to become very samey, you know, like this guy's Christmas is always ruined by some heinous crime that's committed. And then I felt like he always comes home to his wife, and now they have a daughter, and she's always sort of there waiting for him. She has dinner on the table and he's ready to listen to his hard day. And I sort of realised somewhere in book 4 that his wife actually plays quite a main character in these stories, but she's not fleshed out as a three-dimensional character at all. She's very flat. She's just basically there to serve him and give him the opportunity to talk about his day. And that started to really bother me, I think, in about book 4. So yeah, I read book 4 and then I read book 5, and I don't think after I read book 5 I was convinced that I really wanted to carry on with this series. I think this series is still ongoing, but I doubt that I will pick up book 6. I think this is now a did not finish for me. I don't think that I will pick up any of the future books in this series, but I did enjoy the beginning ones. Next up we have another detective series, which is the DCI Logan series by J.D. Kirk. Now this is massive. There's like 22 books in this police series, which again is much the same as the others. He's looking at serial killers and horrific crimes. Now the works again have been doing offers on these books over the last few years, and I think that's where I picked up the first 2 books, which was from the works, to give them a read. So that was A Litter of Bones and Thicker Than Water. I didn't really like the main character, DCI Logan, if I'm honest. I didn't really enjoy the style in which it was written. It just wasn't really for me, and I think that after you've read the Maeve Kerrigan series by Jane Casey, they are so well done that this one, it just didn't even come close to being as good a quality. I didn't think so. Yeah, I've got through 2 books. There's 22. This is a did not finish series for me. I don't think I could be bothered to carry on with this one, especially when I feel that there's better police series out there. So the next one, I'm calling it Holly Gibney by Stephen King. So I think there's 7. Yeah, there's 7 books in what I would call the Holly Gibney series by Stephen King. However, this is split between, there's like the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, which is Mr. Mercedes, Finders Keepers and End of Watch. So that's a solid trilogy, but Holly turns up in the first one. And then you've got The Outsider, which is part of the same crime series but is not in the Bill Hodges trilogy. And then you've got a short story, If It Bleeds, and then you've got an actual book called Holly, and then you've got Never Flinch, which is the final one, which came out last year. Now I think he might be writing another Holly Gibney book, so we might find there's 8 books in Holly Gibney's series, but it's never actually been formally named the Holly Gibney series, but I'm classing it as like a series. So out of the 7 books, I've read 6 so far, so I'm very up to date with that. I just haven't read Never Flinch because I'm waiting for it to come out in paperback, because all of my Stephen Kings are in paperback, so I didn't really want to buy a hardback because then it would not look right on the shelf. So yeah, I'm pretty up to date with that one. The next one is a fairly old series actually, but I only read it, the first book of it, probably in the middle of last year. So it's called the Dollenganga series by Virginia Andrews, and the first book in that is quite famous. It's The Flowers in the Attic. Apparently there are 11 books in this series, which I found quite a surprise. I knew that there was a couple. I knew that there was The Flowers in the Attic, and then there was like Petals on the Wind, and then Thorns something or other. And I never actually read this when I was younger, yet loads of girls at my school had read it when they were like about 12 or 13 years old, but I'd never come across a copy, wasn't on my radar. Anyway, I decided to read Flowers in the Attic last year, and I was like so disturbed by this book. I remember thinking, like, I can't believe that 12 and 13-year-olds were like going out actually reading this book. Like, it was full of all kinds of well, disturbing things like incest, you know, paedophilia, you know, murder, you know, but it was quite gripping, and I did really enjoy it. So I will definitely be reading the second book, which is Petals on the Wind. Is it on the wind or in the wind? Petals on the Wind or in the wind? Because I've actually bought it ready to read after Flowers in the Attic, but I just haven't had the opportunity to re-pick that up again. Will I read all 11 books in this series? No, I don't think I will. I sort of fail to see now, you know, we're past book 1, how this can really be stretched out to 11 books. I mean, I might read book 2 and be converted and think, yeah, okay, it's worth going on to book 3. Never say never on this one. But I sort of have a feeling that I doubt I'm going to finish this series. But I think that you probably, you know, you can definitely read the first book in isolation and not feel like you're missing out by not reading any of the others, because I read it last year and I don't feel like I'm missing any great bit of the story from not having read 2 and 3. I'm not sure when the first one was written actually that it was even meant to be a series necessarily. I think that these other books have come off the back of it because the first one was so successful. So yeah, that one is written by Virginia Andrews. So the next one is again a series that I have spoken about on my channel because I started it in December, which was the Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. So I read A Darker Shade of Magic, and you know, I said in my review I was not really that impressed with this book. It wasn't as good as I'd hoped. It was really quite YA, with a disturbing amount of blood in it, but because I actually bought the trilogy when it was on offer, like all 3 books together, so I do have A Gathering of Shadows, which is the next one. So I think that I will read the second one because I'd like to see if the first book is just kind of like setting the scene and then it kicks off properly from book 2, because I know that that can sometimes happen in books where they've actually been purposely written as a series. So I do want to give that another chance, but I'm not in a rush to, and that's simply because I didn't enjoy the first one as much as I'd sort of hoped based on other work of V.E. Schwab that I've consumed. So then the next series I have on the go is Thursday Next series by Jasper Fort. This is a really interesting series which is comedy fantasy, I'd call it. And basically we follow this character called Thursday, and she works at this ministry for literature, and basically the first book, which is called The Eyre Affair, is essentially I think it's Jane Eyre goes missing from the book, or a character in Jane Eyre's book goes missing, can't quite remember, but essentially our character has to travel into the books to try and solve the crime that's happened in the book. This is a really interesting and quirky concept. So yeah, I've read the first book, which is The Eyre Affair, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, I gave that 5 stars. I really love that kind of comedy. I think it's great. So I would look forward to reading the second one, which is Lost in a Good Book. I just simply haven't got round to it. Although I think I read The Eyre Affair probably in about June last year. So it was really like only about 6 months ago that I did read the first book. So I'm not too fussed that I haven't moved on to the second one yet. But I should like to move on to the second one before a year passes, just so I don't completely forget what's happened in the first book. And then finally, a series that I sort of started, it wasn't at the start of last year, I think it was the end of 2024 that I started this series. and it's called Isabel Dalhousie by Alexander McCall Smith. And I initially got into this series because it looked like a sort of cosy crime series that I could get my head around. I mean, I'm not that fond of cosy crime, but this one, the main character Isabel, she's like an editor of a philosophy paper. So there's some really good philosophical questions in this book that the character is sort of asking herself and asking the people around her, and sort of pondering on through the book, you know. And I did really like that. So in the first book, The Sunday Philosophy Club, there's a lot of that going on in there, and I really enjoyed it. And there was a sort of crime in there as well that she was trying to solve. Not that she's sort of asked to solve crime, she just sort of pokes her nose in to do it. And I sort of hoped that the rest of the series would be of a similar vein, but it really wasn't. So there's now currently 15 books in this series, and I have a feeling that Alexander McCall Smith might still be writing it, because I feel like I keep seeing it go up. And I've read the first 4 books, and I cannot bring myself to bring the 5th book, like read the 5th book in this series. Like, the first book was fairly decent, and then it just started going downhill, I think, from the second book. There has not really been any crime in any of the following books, and you know, there was some philosophical stuff in the second one which I found quite interesting, but then that sort of started to drop off a little bit. And Isabel is a really hard character to like, and I just feel a lot of it is her just pining after this young man that she really fancies, or you know, is actually in love with, and you know, whether or not she should approach him. And it sort of started to get on my nerves, if I'm honest. So yeah, it started off well, but it's not something that I want to finish. So that's going to be a do not finish series for me. And I suppose you could say number 16 of series I've got on the go was the Neuromancer series by William Gibson. Now, in December I read Neuromancer, and it was a hard did not finish for me. I did not enjoy that book, and I said I have absolutely no intention of carrying on with that book. So yeah, of the 16 series that I've sort of started, I'd say in the last 24 months, or have been reading in the last 24 months, because obviously I've been reading the Maeve Kerrigan series longer than that, with there being so many books of it. There are 4 on the list that we can just discount now because they're going to be do not finish. So the Neuromancer series, I am not going to be finishing that. I'm not going to be finishing the Isabel Dalhousie series. Not going to be finishing the DCI Logan series, and I'm not going to be finishing the Alex Pine series. So that leaves us with, I'd say, 12 series left that are on the go. I would say that there's 3 of those series that I'm really on top of. So like Holly Gibney, I'm really on top of that. I'd say the Jane Casey series, I'm really on top of that as well. And let me just have a look. I have so many notes here. There's another one that I'm quite on top of as well. Well, I'd say the Passage trilogy, because like I'm a third of the way through that, so I'm quite on top of that as well. But I'd also say the longer series, I'm quite on top of that as well, because I've read 2 out of 5 books in quite a short space of time on that one as well. So yeah, I've currently got 12 series on the go. There are a range of things from like police investigation series to sci-fi, to vampire. So there's enough there to keep me entertained, and also like comedic fantasy as well with the Thursday Next series. So I think that probably in order to make sure that I am tackling these series and they're not getting left because they're not fitting certain book prompts that I've got, I will probably be doing some months where instead of doing a challenge for a whole month, I might split it up into weeks and say, oh, 1 week I'm going to tackle the series that I've currently got on the go, and then that gives me the opportunity to pick books up about those series when those books might not necessarily fit an overall monthly theme that I'm trying to do. Because I obviously really like these series, or I wouldn't be reading them, but obviously I'd like to be able to try and finish maybe 1 or 2 series this year as well, because there are other series that I want to pick up. So I've said I want to read The Dark Tower by Stephen King this year. I'm really interested to read that, but again, I'm probably going to start that series in February, so then that's going to up the number of the amount of series I've got on the go, and I'm sure that there's other series that I've got on my shelves that I'm waiting to start. Like for example, I really want to start the Strike series by Robert Galbraith as well, but I'm actually holding off on that until I've finished a few other series. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below if you're currently reading any of the series that I'm reading and where you are with it. Also let me know if any of those series for you are going to be a do not finish, like you're not interested in reading them anymore, and why. That would be interesting. And if you like this video, please press the like button, and if you'd like to see my future content, please press the subscribe button. My next video will be on Thursday, and on that day I'll be doing a review of all the books that I've read in the last week. Thanks for joining me today, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye!